Morning all. I'm Matt. I wear a number of hats, but one of them is responsibility for QA. And I want to talk to you a little bit about the journey that we've been on in the last 12 months with all of our customers, but probably LV in particular. So I'm just going to kick off a job. It's not going to be much to look at, but I'll come back to what it's doing in a minute. Anyway, we'll leave that running in the background. So, Robotester, the last 12 months. I want to start with talking about culture, because culture actually is probably at the heart of everything we've been trying to change for the last 12 months. And what happens when things go wrong? So, who tested this thing? That's what it feels like sometimes. When something does go wrong, and software's complex, software's difficult. The deployment, building, testing software is hard work. It's an art, it's not a science, generally. And then there's the next thing that happens. Do more testing, more testing. So, find the tester, and tell them to do more, add more tests, to actually build up this pack of more and more things that we run through each time. But we've tried really hard to move away from that, and what we're going for is more of this approach. So this is Dr. Spock showing us the test triangle, for those of you who are familiar with it. Yeah, QA joke. But you never thought you'd hear one of them. But the point here is that it's not the Spanish Inquisition. It's about when did we introduce the problem. And problems are almost never introduced by testing itself. They're detected by testing, but they're never introduced by it. How can we avoid it in the future? So that's the behaviour that we've been driving for. Something that Pete talks about a lot, which is a really valuable model, is the Western model of organisational culture. I don't know if you've come across it at all. But he categorises organisations into three headline categories of pathological, bureaucratic and generative. If you look down at some of those behaviours like messengers shot versus messengers trained, responsibility shirked versus risks are shared, it's clear that where we're aiming for, and I think we've made great strides towards this generative culture on the right. And the interesting thing about it is that you can't do that in isolation. You have to work very closely with your client. You both have to be on that journey. You can't do it on your own. And probably the biggest shift, and the one that I really want to highlight before I go into sort of a couple of examples, is, can you see okay, by the way? Sorry, I'm standing right in the way. Is to talk about where you expend most of your quality and testing energy during the course of a development cycle. So we discover what we're going to do, we develop, we deploy it, and then we monitor it in live. And traditionally what happens is that the effort associated with QA really ramps up towards the border between development and deploy, because that's when there's perceived to be the most risk with deployment. So all of the oversight, all of the work, all of the ramp up goes into that part of the cycle. And what that means, amongst many other things, is it leaves very little option for automation. You have to do that once you've actually been through that heavy cycle. The green line also shows how much it costs to fix a problem in the course of that life cycle. So what you're doing is you're expending a lot of effort, you're reducing your opportunities to increase efficiency, and you're doing it at a time when detecting problems is actually really expensive. And the other consequence of that is that there's often a gap between the code being ready and it being approved to go into live. And I'll come back to that in a little while, but that's very wasteful because code isn't useful until users use it. We could build the most beautiful microservices and everything in the world, but until they're in the hands of a user, it means nothing. So what we've been working on, and what we've done, I think, very successfully over the last 12 months is this shift left. This is where we look to expend our testing effort. So the oversight takes place up front, and all we have to do is to prove that we said that we've done what we were going to do. There's still an approval gap occasionally, but it tends to be more efficient because it feels less risky to people. You're approving what we're going to do and how we're going to prove it's done. We're not pressing the button to put the thing in line. And that leaves greater opportunities for automation and exploration. So that's a shift that I think we've done in conjunction with Chris Conrath and his team. I think it's worked really, really well on the LV side and internally as well with our other customers. So going back to what is hopefully now a successful run. Yep, there you go. So what I just did there was I ran the test suite for Pension Wizard. So all 131 of our API tests, and I can't actually quite see it at the bottom of the report because it's hiding behind there, but it does say, believe me, that 131 of them passed, as I was hoping. And I just want to, before we finish, I just want to go through a few figures. So this is how long in minutes that process took in the past, approximately, yeah? So for someone to take it end to end through the journey, and I've just done that in 2 minutes, which isn't a bad increase. But it gets better. This is the number of minutes that I estimate we used to spend on oversight for each release of retirement visit, jointly, collectively, checking every single report. We can now do that in 14 minutes, which is a massive increase in efficiency, and credit to all the people who've worked on automation and everyone on the LV side who's helped us embed that within the organisation, because that's the cultural challenge around that shouldn't be underestimated. But finally, it wouldn't be a test presentation without a little video. So I know Sam's sadly moved on, but you know, as a tribute to Mr. Smith, hopefully this is going to work.